Have you ever listened to a CEO give this amazing presentation? You're totally sold on the vision, and then the stock just goes nowhere? Well, today, we're going to look past the PowerPoints and the fancy speeches. We're going to learn how to judge a CEO on what actually counts, their record. Let's jump in.
So here's the big question, right? How can you actually tell if a CEO is the real deal? I mean, they're all amazing at selling a story. That's kind of their job. But our job is to figure out if that story holds up to the facts.
You know, the legendary investor Joel Greenblatt absolutely nailed it when he said, "Everybody tells a good story. Looking at people's track record has been much more helpful." And he's spot on. The story is what they want you to hear. The record, well, the record is what really happened, and we're about to show you how to read it.
I mean, think about it. A huge part of a CEO's job is to paint this incredible picture of the future. But sometimes a fantastic story can paper over some not so fantastic cracks in the foundation. That's why we have to switch our mindset from being just an audience member to being an investigator.
Okay, so it's time to put on our detective hats. From now on, we're not just taking their word for it. No way. We're going to dig into the public records, hunt for the clues, and piece together the real story behind a CEO's leadership.
And you know, any good detective needs a toolkit, right? A framework, a repeatable process that helps us get to the truth, no matter which CEO we're looking at. So, you ready to see what's in our kit? Our investigation is going to focus on 4 key areas. First up, we're going to do a background check. Where do they come from? Do they know what they're doing? Then we follow the money. We want to see if their incentives actually line up with ours as shareholders. After that, we look at their behavior and how they run the show. And finally, we'll check just how open and honest they are in their disclosures. All right, theory's great, but let's put this toolkit to the test with a real-world example. We're opening up a case file on Scott Boatwright. He's the new CEO of Chipotle, that burrito chain that's been on an absolute tear. Let's see what the public record tells us about him.
First things first, let's look at his resume. So Boatwright is a lifer in the restaurant business. He spent almost 2 decades at Arby's before he made the jump to Chipotle back in 2017. And here's a really good sign. He was an internal hire, promoted from within. That tells you the board already trusts him and wants that continuity.
Okay, now for what I think is one of the most important questions. Is he aligned with shareholders? In other words, how much skin does the CEO actually have in the game? An executive's own investment in the company speaks way louder than any press release.
Well, a quick look at the filings shows he owns more than $8.3 million worth of Chipotle stock. Wow, that is a serious chunk of change. And it tells you that when the stock goes up, he wins big. And when it goes down, he feels the pain right alongside every other investor. And here's the really cool part. This isn't some secret inside information. It's all sitting right there in public filings for anyone to see. All it takes is a little bit of digging and some pretty basic math, and suddenly you've uncovered a massive piece of the puzzle. Now, this is where we get into the really interesting stuff, the world of insider transactions. And the key that unlocks it all is a little document called an SEC Form 4. This is where every company insider has to publicly report every single time they buy or sell their company's stock. So, as we're digging through Boatwright's file, something jumps out. Uh-oh. A recent filing shows he got rid of almost 82,000 shares. Now, that could be a huge red flag, right? Is he quietly heading for the exits? This is where our investigative skills really matter. See, a Form 4 is great because it tells you exactly what an insider did. But it doesn't always tell you why they did it. And that why is everything. A big sale could be a sign of trouble, sure, but it could also be something completely harmless. We have to dig deeper. And this is the key distinction you have to understand. On one side, you have something called RSU tax withholding. This is super common. It's just the company automatically selling some shares to pay the taxes when an executive gets a stock award. It's procedural. But on the other side, you have an open market sale. That's when the executive themselves makes the active choice to hit the sell button. That's the one that definitely requires a closer look. So, back to our case. What was up with Boatwright's big sale? Well, if you look closely at the footnotes on that Form 4 filing, it tells you everything. Withholding to satisfy RSU tax obligations. Boom, case closed. This wasn't him cashing out. It was just a routine procedural tax payment. This is not a red flag. And you know what's even more reassuring? It's not just Boatwright. When we pull the filings for the other top executives at Chipotle, we see the exact same pattern.
It's all about shares vesting and taxes getting paid. We're not seeing a rush of insiders selling on the open market. That tells you the whole leadership team is rowing in the same direction.
Okay, so after all our digging, what's the final verdict on Chipotle's new CEO? Let's step back, look at all the evidence we've gathered, and put together our final report. So here's how it shakes out. In the strengths column, you've got an experienced insider who was promoted from within, and he has a ton of skin in the game. Those are big, big positives. Now, on our watch list, we're going to keep an eye out for any future open market sales. We'll also want to see if he sets up a 10b5-1 plan, which is basically a pre-scheduled selling plan. And of course, the real test is going to be the numbers, how the company actually performs. And this, to me, is the most powerful part of this whole exercise. Everything we just did, every piece of evidence we uncovered, it's all available to you, right now, for free, in public records. You don't need a special login or a fancy Wall Street terminal to do this kind of digging. You just have to know where to look.
So, next time you hear a CEO tell a great story, just remember, the story they tell is public, but their actual record, that's buried in the filings. You now know how to find it. The only question left is, which one are you going to trust?